It's time. Time to get inspired and empowered. To realize it's never too late to create your next amazing story. Get ready to break through, transform, and start living the life of your dreams. So, are you ready? Truly ready to begin your journey to create your next amazing story in life and love? Great. Let's jump in with your host, Life and Love Transformational Coach, Suzanne Oshima.
Welcome, everybody, to the It's Never Too Late show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a Life and Love Transformational Coach at Your Next Amazing Story. I am so excited because today we're interviewing my favorite couple, Lisa and Benjamin Shield. And Lisa is a love coach extraordinaire. And today we're talking about it's never too late to fall in love again with an amazing man. So welcome, Lisa and Benjamin. I'm so excited to have you guys here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you.
I know. And, Lisa, I've interviewed you several times. I love your love story. But this is the first time that we're going to hear Benjamin's side of the story. And
Right.
I can't wait.
Right.
So, and Benjamin, we want you to be honest and share with us, those deep down feelings that you felt when you first met Lisa. But before we get to that, Lisa, I would love for you to share with the ladies, because I think everybody tends to look at amazing couples like you and Benjamin, and they tend to think, oh, well, they're just so lucky. She has it so easy, but that's not true, right? So what is your story, Lisa? What happened?
He's a pain in the ass.
Well, before you met Benjamin, what was your life like? Because was finding love easy for you before you met Benjamin?
Hell no. Not at all. Not at all. Nothing about finding this guy was easy. I will truncate the story, but I was married. I stayed in a 13-year marriage to my pathological lying ex-husband because I was terrified. Prior to that, I'd never really had relationships, and I felt like I was a colossal failure in the love department. So I stayed in this marriage way too long, and I finally got myself out of there, looked around, and I said, Lisa, you don't have another 13 years to waste. You got to look at why did you pick this guy and why did you stay with him for 13 years? And that was the beginning of my journey to really figuring this all out, because I knew it was me. I was very, very clear that this was me, and I had to work on myself, and I did everything I could, everything. Any class or coach or therapist or whatever. I studied with Don Miguel Ruiz for many years. I've been in, everything I could, anything at that time. This was 20 years ago. And if I thought there were answers, I did it. And then I was turning 40. And that was kind of scary in Los Angeles, because there are more stunningly beautiful women in this town than maybe anywhere else on the planet. And I thought, no chance in hell I'm going to be in my 40s and single. And I just said, you got to get over your big bad self. You've got to get out there. He is not coming, beating a path to your door. In fact, there were no men in my life after all that interpersonal work I'd done. I had less men than before.
Now, why do you think that is? Because I always try to think like my audience, and right now that you just scared them, because they're like, wait, she did all this inner work and now there's less men?
Less men. I mean, I don't know if, I think, Suzanne, one of the biggest mistakes, it's a great question, and I talk to my clients about this a lot. I think there are many, many, many myths about finding partnership. One huge myth that we all know is just go about your life and love will, when you least expect it, love will find you. And I think another myth is work on yourself, keep improving you, and love will find you. Because the truth is, you get better at being you, but there's a whole new skill set that we have to learn in order to have a partner. We have to then work on ourselves, but then start to open up to bringing someone into our lives, learning how to relate to men, learning what men want from us. So that's a whole different skill set. And therapy isn't going to get you there. Reading books isn't going to get you there. Really getting out and having the right tools and skills and knowing how to open your heart to an amazing man, how to communicate, how to understand men. Those are skills we have to learn. And so I realized that even though I was the most fabulous version of me that I had ever been, I now had to, that was just half the journey. The second half of the journey was being able to now do, open up and show a man how fabulous I was. And so I had a really serious conversation with myself. And I said, Lisa, you don't understand men. You know nothing about this. You're wishing and hoping and praying for a fantasy that isn't going to happen, because what you're looking for in a partner, you're actually scared to death. If that partner walked in, at that moment in my life, I would have sabotaged it. I would have pushed him away, because deep down, I didn't have the skills, and I knew it, to relate to a man at that level. And I think that many, many women have, they're delusional. They're delusional. I don't know the right word to use, but they think they've got this fantasy that I'm so fabulous, because I had that fantasy. I'm so fabulous. Look at me, all my friends, my great career, all of this. But no, there weren't men in my life. And so there was something wrong with that picture. And I realized I had to open up.
So Lisa, when you talk about the skills, right? Like, how did you get the skills? That's question number one. But question number two is, because I know you weren't a love coach back then, right? Do you feel like your career was repelling men away?
No, because I wasn't I was an importer. I imported from Mexico and Vietnam, and
manufactured.
And I manufactured there, and I had my own business when I met Benjamin. And so I wasn't a coach, but you also have to remember, I went online 20 years ago, and then I decided Benjamin is the one who 3 months into our dating, he looked at me and he said, you're not an importer. You should be a coach or a therapist. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, because all you talk about is personal transformation. And I was getting my master's degree in spiritual psychology at the time. And so it was just, that was all I talked about. And so he was right. And I was graduating soon, and I decided to sell my business. I sold it to an ex-boyfriend, believe it or not, Hugo. And Benjamin's met him, great guy. But I sold the business, and I enrolled in coaching training. And I knew then that this is what I was going to coach. But here's the thing. When I did this, there was no such thing as a love coach. They didn't exist. And so I knew, because I had come from so far away, my parents hated each other, never had a great relationship. And then I meet the finest human being and marry the best man I have ever met anywhere. There's got to be other guys as good as this one, but there is nobody finer than this man right here. And I thought, I have to show women how to do this, because this is a freaking miracle. And so I just I'm going to coach women, I'm just going to show them how to find their Benjamin. So yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, you were doing online dating for, you said 3 months before you met Benjamin?
3 months, 2 years.
Oh, okay.
2 freaking long years.
And how many dates would you guesstimate that you went on before you actually met Benjamin?
I don't need to guesstimate. There were 96 first dates between that sobering conversation I had with myself that before my 40th birthday and meeting this man here.
And only 2 or 3.
And only 2 second dates out of all of that.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
Yep.
so now let's talk about how you came across Benjamin on the site. Was it that you saw him online, or did he see you and contact you?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you would ask me another question about how there weren't love coaches. But what I did, Suzanne, was I had been doing all of this work on myself. And so I took everything I had learned from all of these programs, from Don Miguel, the Four Agreements, all of this, and I applied it directly to my dating. So like each month I would do a different agreement. And I'd say, okay, this month I'm not going to take anything personally. And then I would just practice dating and not taking anything personally. Then I do, always do your best, or I did be impeccable in your word. So I was applying the things that I had learned on my spiritual journey directly to my dating. And that's how I got here. That was how I got to him. So he contacted me first. You want to tell her about that?
Right. Well, I fell in love with her smile. I mean, her Facebook photo, she was
my profile picture. Facebook wasn't even a thing.
Right. Your profile.
Yeah.
On JDate.
Mm-hmm.
And she was up against an orange wall, which turned out to be a wall in one of your warehouses. And her head was tilted back, and she had the most joyous smile. And it was just, something so appealing, that I reached out and I wrote her, and she wrote, I wrote her a nice note, and she wrote back and she said, "Okay, Benjamin,
Shield,
you made the first cut," and I'm thinking, wow, what do I have to do to make, and she was joking, and I took it very seriously. I was doing the pinch test to my, stomach, I was looking, like for a double chin, I was just, like, wow, this woman is tough.
I was just kidding.
But
that is so
I
funny.
liked her so much, from the picture and from her profile that I took it very seriously.
But the funniest thing is, Suzanne, his first email message to me, it turned out it was like one of 3 pre-written emails he had. He would cut and paste these different emails, and everybody's like, this looks like, all my clients are like, well, that looks like a pre-written email or whatever. Well, I got a pre-written email. So.
Did you know that, Lisa, at the time? Because sometimes you can tell, but you couldn't tell, right?
No, because he said your profile has depth and charm. So it was pretty deep, but he was sending that to me and 20 other women on JDate.
Actually, there were like five total.
So
5 other women got that.
That's so funny. So Benjamin, now for you, how long had you been doing online dating before you came across Lisa's profile?
Well, I was doing some dating and short relationships, and I had an assistant who worked on Saturdays. She just came in. I had a regular assistant. Then this one particular woman who came in on Saturdays loved online dating, and she pushed me into it. And I wrote a profile, and I put photographs up, and I looked at my profile, which sounded like everyone else's, like I'm trying to sell myself to everyone, to as many people as possible. And I was actually embarrassed. I was embarrassed to have it up. And I realized I didn't want to attract myself or be attracted. I didn't want to attract myself to a wide range of people, but just those people who I really felt in sync with their frequency. So I withdrew my profile, and I spent about, I can't even remember, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, rewriting it, going to see my therapist at the time, even a former therapist. My goal was not to attract 98% of the people, but attracted 2% of the people. And so my goal was to say exactly who I was, but also who I wasn't, so people wouldn't be disappointed, and what I wanted and what I didn't want. And so my goal was really for that 2%. And, so I had very few dates.
Because he did a good job of turning some of them off. He had a whole paragraph about why he didn't want to get remarried and why he didn't want to live with someone. So, some women wrote back to him angrily and said, well, what are you even doing on here looking for, dating if you don't want to get married and live with someone?
Yeah. And I think most of all in my profile, I said that some of the most successful relationships are unconventional relationships. And so I was staying open for that. And so we had our first date. And do you want to?
Okay, so now let me ask you a question, because before we get to the first date, because I think one of the biggest complaints from women is that you can go too much back and forth online and on the phone before you actually meet up. So Lisa, how much time back and forth did you have before you went to the first date?
He sent me an email, a message on the site. I wrote him back and I said, okay, Benjamin Shield, you made the first cut. I'm leaving to go to Vietnam for 3 weeks. So if you, in 2 days, so if you want to get together before I go, let me know, right? I think that was pretty much it.
Right.
And I sent him my number because he had already sent me his. He sent me his number in his email, in his message. And then he called me and we had literally maybe a 5 or 10 minute phone call. Yeah. He said, I don't know. He said, you're leaving, so I'm going to come over to your side of town, because he was about 45 minutes away in traffic. And he said, where would you like to go? And I didn't know of I didn't want to think of a restaurant because I didn't know his budget. And so I didn't want to, pick the restaurant. And so I said, oh, anything is fine. And he said, well, the only place I know in your area is,
it was a Mexican El Commodore or something like that.
Yeah, El Coyote or something. No, that's a different one. But a Mexican restaurant that was very well known and old and whatever, from that had been there for years. And I didn't like the look of it from the outside. And I was on a really strict diet. But when I said I'll go anywhere, I can eat anything, Benjamin said Mexican, this Mexican place. And I said, oh, anything but Mexican. So I totally set him up and then totally cut him down at the knees. And then I thought, okay, well, that gave me an idea of what kind of restaurant he was looking at, whatever. And so I said, there's this little Thai place we can go to called Simply Thai. So that's where we met for our first so yeah, that was our first date.
Okay, so now I know the story. So Lisa, you got to the restaurant first, correct? And share with the ladies what happened, because this is so funny to me.
So I am never, I'm always the one who's late, right? And I get to the restaurant. I think I'm on time. I mean, God knows I should have been. It was right down the street from me. And I'm sitting there and it's a weeknight, maybe a Thursday or something, I don't know, Wednesday or Thursday. So there's nobody in the place, right? And I'm just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and sitting there and no Benjamin. And, I was drinking my tea, my jasmine tea or whatever. And I'm waiting and waiting. And then finally, the hostess calls me over and she puts me on the phone. And it's Benjamin. And he says to me, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I missed the exit or whatever. And he said, I went all the way into East LA. And this was really before cell phones. I don't even know if I had my cell phone with me. And he said, God, we sound so old. I'm like, there's no Facebook, there's no cell phones. And he says, I'm so sorry. And I, who had been reading Eckhart Tolle, right? I am getting my master's in spiritual psychology. I work with Don Miguel. I am a modern, evolved, deep spiritual woman. And I say to this man, don't worry. I'm just sitting here enjoying myself. So enjoy. I'm just sitting here enjoying myself. And I said, is everything okay? Are you all right? And he said, yes. And, and I said, that's fine. Just take your time. I'll be here when you get here. Like this. And not the original me of who started dating 2 years earlier. This is the evolved, calm, feminine Lisa, right? And what did you think when I said that, baby?
Well, first, I kept missing it. It was Los Feliz, and there's this 5-street intersection where Hillhurst and Sunset and God knows what. And Hillhurst is another name on the other side. So I kept going towards downtown LA. And I had this little Panasonic flip top phone, and cell reception was terrible. So, I kept trying to get to the restaurant, and trying to get my phone and trying to, find my way there. And twice I went towards downtown. Then I finally got it. And I finally got cell reception. And I said, is there a woman there who's been sitting there for maybe at least 20 minutes or more by herself? And they handed Lisa the phone. I was getting so frustrated. It was one of those things where, just say, if anything comes out of this effing date, it's going to be an effing miracle. I'm ready to throw the phone out the window. It was so frustrating because I'm never late. I think that was maybe the first and last time I've ever been late.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I usually get to places early and just sit there or circle the block or,
Yeah, he would have been there well before me normally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you heard this sweet, thoughtful, loving woman.
Everything just melted. And, I still, pulled up to the restaurant in a screech. Fortunately, there was a spot right in front. And,
fortunately, because he had this really hot sports car, vintage sports car that he drove.
That's so funny. So, Benjamin, when you heard Lisa say that, because she could have said something else, which would have been a turnoff, right? When she said that, how did that make you feel on the inside?
I want to marry this woman.
Did you really have that thought?
Well, I knew that after our first date, I mean, this was just one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. The other aspect was that, and I'm telling part of Lisa's story, but Lisa had said, I've done all this work on myself, for.
Well, you asked me. You said,
yeah.
He said, well, what are you? Something. What are you looking for? That usually comes up, and this was my answer.
That I've done so much work on myself, a lot of work on myself, and at this point, I'm just looking.
I'm done working.
I'm done working.
No, I said I've done so much hard work on myself. Uh-huh. And I said, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But I said, I've done so much hard work on myself. And I said, I'm done working hard. All I want to do is find an amazing man and just have fun.
And that's when I silently put my hands together and said, thank you, God. Because I don't, men really don't want, most men, and when I say most, all men, don't want to process. They don't want to spend their life processing.
Yeah.
And the thought of someone just wanting to have fun and be with, be together and make it, life just this really fun adventure where every day is an adventure. And it has been. We spend about, I think we figured 94% laughing and 6% in reverence. And
we have so much fun. We've literally never had a fight in our lives. Not a fight, not a single fight.
And if we did have an agreement, we don't even remember it.
A disagreement.
Yeah, a disagreement. It would have blown over in an hour, never more than a day. But I don't even remember, And so on that first date, I think the first thing a man has to prove on a first date is that he's not a serial killer. So,
that's one thing.
About breakfast cereal.
Yeah, right. So, you're just trying to put your best foot forward and Lisa had asked me if I was on a spiritual path. And my mind went, if you remember one of these old-fashioned computers where the lights go back and forth, like they're trying to seek an answer, back and forth, back and forth. And I had to look at her and said,
but wait, I thought he was short-circuiting. He literally was going like this. And, I thought, okay, I just ruined the entire date. Because here we are in Southern California, right? And I might as well have said, so what's your zodiac sign? I mean, I thought every stupid, sorry, I said a bad word, but on every date, every guy thinks, women ask, what kind of spiritual path? Do you do yoga? And I just thought, oh my God, he thinks I'm a bimbo. So, yeah. And he was really trying to think, do I have a spiritual path?
Aww.
And I just looked at her and I said, not really. I think when you make your life about, living in a spiritual way with gratitude and kindness, that you don't really see a path. It's just there, like a fish doesn't see water, and so
that's so beautiful.
I'm not trying to bolster myself up, but I couldn't think of a thing. So finally so I wouldn't sound like a complete idiot, I said, well, I just wrote these 4 books with my best friend, and I think you had asked one of the titles.
Well, I said, what are the titles? And you started listing them.
Yeah. And one of the books that was required reading for spiritual psychology, the second year of a spiritual psychology master's program. So
it was called Handbook for the Heart. And it was and I say this honestly, it was my favorite book that we read. The favorite one, and it had the most beautiful cover on it. And Benjamin had designed the cover. It was his design, and the book was his idea, Handbook for the Heart. And it was so beautiful. They interviewed, he and his best friend wrote it together, and there were 4 of these books, but this one, they had interviewed the preeminent thinkers of the day, like who was that? Marianne Williamson, the Dalai Lama.
Mother Teresa was interviewed.
Yeah, just phenomenal people. And these were essays that they got from each one of these different people.
Well, we got the interviews, and
then they wrote the essays. And Benjamin had an essay in there, but they met all of these people, and it was really quite extraordinary. The book was beautiful. It was all these different essays on how we could bring more love into our lives.
It took me out of the serial killer category and into a potential partner category. So that was step 1.
Well, I feel like just that alone, you were destined to meet each other.
Ah.
Well, I actually laugh because I read that book, but so did 260 other people in my class.
Yeah, but 260 other people didn't go on a date with Benjamin and marry him. So
I have to tell you the funniest story, though. A woman in my class said, oh, yeah, I looked at the picture on the back of that book. She was also single and Jewish. And she said, I looked at the back of that book. And she said, he was really cute. I wondered if he was single. I said, no.
That's funny. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Now, how long after you guys met did you get married?
Well, we met September 10th, 2002. We bought our house together here. September 2003. We got married September 10th, 2004. There's nothing magical about that date, except that I only wanted to remember one date. I just have to remember September 10th, our first date, our marriage. It turned out to be a Wednesday for our marriage. I just wanted to kind of keep it simple.
He's kidding. It was romantic.
Aw, I love silly.
That. It was really romantic. But his best friend married us. And
my best friend was Richard Carlson, who wrote the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books.
That's so funny.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's since passed. It's been about 13 years, which is a shame. But we were best friends for decades. And he married us in our living room. Um,
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yeah.
Lisa Sharpay was the best man.
I
My
know
brother
all
was
about
the
your
best
dogs.
man.
So, Benjamin, one
We
last
could rewrite
question for
history.
you.
It's
But your
okay.
Sharpay was right there.
Yes, he was. Yes, he
Benjamin,
was.
one last question for you because I want to bring this full circle because I know women are wondering the answer to this question because
Uh-huh.
you had said at the beginning of your dating journey that you did not want to get married again. And
Right.
so, what shifted for you that made you say, oh my goodness, I want to get married again?
Well, I wasn't trying to avoid intimacy by not getting married, but after a year, or really shortly after we were together, it just didn't seem right to refer to her as my girlfriend or my significant other or my partner because the connection was so much deeper. And I realized I mean, I am so proud to call her my wife and refer to her as my wife. And it brings it to an entirely different level. I don't think well, I know my level of commitment wouldn't have been different. You know, my love for her wouldn't be different, but it just brings everything to such a finer level.
But honey, why did you want to commit to me? What was it about what Suzanne wants to know? Because women want to know, what was Lisa doing? How was she being? Why, did you overcome that desire not to get married?
Well,
What was that? What was it about me?
leading up to that, I'm probably speaking for every listener out there. There was a series of relationships that just ended poorly or ended badly. One or the other. And with Lisa, everything was easy. She didn't take things personally. Um, she listened to me. Um, um, we, it just seemed easy. And I just wanted more and more and more of a connection. And so it was clear that, after our first date, Lisa went to Southeast Asia for 3.5 weeks. I marked that on my calendar and called her the day that she had gotten back. And we've been together ever since. But it's because she doesn't take things personally. She has a great sense of humor. She laughs at my jokes anyway.
I have him fooled.
She even writes them down, things that I, wouldn't have remembered saying that she'll, give to me on Valentine's Day or something. Some, like a list of jokes that you know. So I think it was just, I don't know if there's a vocabulary for it.
But I will tell you, I listen. So I really want women to hear, I make it easy. There's nothing about our relationship that is complicated. We don't get caught up in petty or small things. We love each other so much that we are totally willing to just let go of any pettiness or smallness in any moment because we really do want what's best for each other.
Mm.
And finally, I listen to him. I hear everything this man says to me. Nothing goes by me. If he's unhappy, if he's discontent about something, if there's something going on in his world where, he's hurting or he's in pain or he's not doing well, I listen to him and I make so much room for Benjamin to be Benjamin. He's a tender and sensitive man. And if somebody were too strong, they would just bowl over him.
Mm-hmm.
Aww.
And so
I love that. That is so amazing. And I have to tell you guys, so I don't know if the audience noticed this, but during the entire interview, I could see how much Benjamin loves you. Like when you're talking, he just looks at you with adoration. And it's just amazing because it's almost like you guys just got married within the last year. And I know you haven't, but I want everyone to see that they can find a Benjamin too, and that it's not easy, but you can't give up, right, Lisa?
It's only as hard as we make it, Suzanne.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yes.
So Lisa, how can the ladies find you?
So go to lisashield.com. That's the easiest way. And you will find, or click the link below this, right? You're going to put that up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have to read this because, let's just see here. This is not cooperating. Oh my goodness. Okay. My website is not happening. All right, here we go. Nope, not going to happen. I have a webinar, and I think it's called The 5 Essential Shifts My Successful Female Clients Use to Cut Through the Games.
Attract the guardian of their soul.
Oh, I don't know. And attract the guardian of their soul. Anyway, go check it out. That's all I can
Awesome,
say.
ladies. So we will put the link right below the video. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can go to Your Next Amazing Story and look for Lisa's interview with Benjamin on my site. And if you would like to get my free video series, The Secrets About Men Over 40, you can click right here on the video, or you can go to yournextamazingstory.com.
Love today's episode of the It's Never Too Late show? Then head on over to yournextamazingstory.com to continue the conversation, get access to show notes, and get more amazing content.